You just picked up Last Epoch after its 1.0 launch this year, and you're wondering what class to play. Now you're wondering what mastery of which class to play. With 15 options open to you, it really becomes a question of which is the best one for beginners, or rather for your playstyle. Do you enjoy magic? What about bow and arrow? Do you want to summon a legion of undead? Whatever you're looking for, there's a flavor for everything in Last Epoch. In this video, I'm going to help break down each mastery on a high level, showing off some gameplay to help you in deciding which is the best class to make your first character. If this is your first time on my channel, the way I do things is by upfronting the knowledge in my videos to see if it's the right one for you. So with that being said, what this video is going to tell you is that there really is no best class. There are currently some overtuned ones that are brand new, like the Falconer or the Warlock, but truly you can play any mastery. It can be 100% viable by simply playing the game 100% how you want. This game is designed in a way to try to make it so that build metas don't reign supreme. Pick any mastery, pick any set of skills that you like, find a damage type, a damage element, a damage mechanic that you like, and apply it to all your skills. Outside of that, this video is decently long, so just please take a look at the chapters in the timeline in the description to simply navigate to the class and masteries that interest you the most. But that's the too long didn't watch this entire video. If that's enough for you to get started with the class that you want, then please feel free to shut the video down and start enjoying your first character in Last Epoch. Before you head out, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you found this video helpful, as that does help me out in a huge way. If you've not yet picked up the game, you can support my channel as well as my mini Aussie's unending toy addiction using the link to my Nexus Store below. You'll get a Steam key and I'll get a commission that greatly helps me out. Well, let's get started here on the best class to play in Last Epoch. So just to start us off here, we've got all 5 of our classes, and let me just say something up front. When you take a look at any one of your classes, you're going to see these 3 masteries, right? Well, these masteries, you will not get them until a set point in the campaign, not a set level. You pretty much only want to put 20 points into your base class, and then you're going to put the rest of them into your mastery and then back into your base class later. But if you're kind of wondering to yourself, well, when do I become a Necromancer? You're going to get to a point in the game right when you get to the lower district, and that is when you are going to get your mastery. So I just want to let you know that up front, because you might be jumping in going, okay, cool, I've put like 25-30 minutes into the game, when do I put points into Necromancer? That point should happen at around an hour or 2 hours into playing. You'll get there very quickly, don't worry about it. And the first class we're going to jump into, though, is Sentinel. Now, Sentinel is going to be kind of your sword and board style of Paladin character, and that's what you're going to get from the base class. You're going to get stuff like Warpath, which eventually becomes your Whirlwind if you want to, Shield Bash, your Javelin. Shield Bash is a really awesome ability. Lunge is really good here as well. Multi-Strike is really cool because you can kind of use it as a reactive. So you take a hit, you can actually just jump back and use another hit. It's really fun. Rebuke, all these abilities that you kind of know from a typical kind of Paladin kit. And the Sentinel has 3 different masteries that will kind of spread you in a focus of being kind of like a melee bruiser, a summoner, and then a kind of more along the lines of a support range style of character. Not necessarily specifically. Let's go into these masteries. Void Knight is going to be more of your glass cannon style of character. You're going to use a lot of high mobility abilities. You're going to be able to jump around. You'll be able to do a ton of crazy damage. You've got Void Cleave. You've got all these really awesome abilities. And it's the only mastery and class in general that uses void damage. Everyone else uses usually some of the elemental ones, or if you go to the Acolyte, you're going to jump into necrotic and poison. But with the Void Knight, you're going to be really leaning into that void damage. And the Void Knight also kind of plays not necessarily like a twisting blade stroke from Diablo, but there's a high amount of mobility and there's not a ton of survivability. Well, there is, because you're still a Sentinel, but compared to the Forge Guard and the Paladin, you are more of a glass cannon than those. So if you want to play a very high damage burst DPS character that really is a lot of skills that you're going to jump in all over the place, like physically your character's going to move a lot, then Void Knight is really going to be for you, because you're going to be pouring on lots of damage, a lot of mobility, a lot of traversal, and a lot of fun with big crunchy numbers with the Void Knight. The Forge Guard, on the other hand, is a way different paced character. If the Void Knight is tons of damage and moving all around, the Forge Guard is a lot slower. What you're going to do is rely on summoning up these disembodied weapons or disembodied armors to fight alongside you. And you can use these in conjunction even with your base Sentinel kit. You can use this Warpath ability, which you're just whirlwinding around and you hit things, and now all of a sudden you've summoned up armor, enchanted armor to come and fight with you. All these really cool capabilities. But the Forge Guard kind of sits in this weird place where it's one of the only masteries outside of Shaman that is set for a real big update. And as it is, it's great, but it could be better. It kind of has a very interesting place in that it lacks a specific identity compared to the other masteries of Sentinel. It's slower. It does a lot of damage when it really can get all of its summons online. So if you want a bit of a slower build that does rely on summons, which is kind of unique for this style of character, it's definitely going to be for you. And it's also extremely defensive and tanky. So you'll be able to lean into those really awesome capabilities with the Forge Guard. Lastly, we have the Paladin. Now, the Paladin isn't strictly a support character that really can't do melee damage, and which I kind of maybe made it sound like with the Sentinel Overview, but it is one that has a lot of really awesome abilities that are on the support end and spectrum of things. Holy Aura is stupid strong. You can just do so much support with it, so much increased damage, 30% increased damage just by having this active. So almost everyone always has this in their builds. But a lot of people will use Paladin as kind of like a range build in that you're going to use the hammer ability of Sentinel to basically be a hammered in. You use the javelin ability, you'll use the rush ability. You'll focus on stuff like Judgment, Sigils of Hope, and Healing Hands, the newest ability added to the Paladin. So if you want to sit in this kind of place where you aren't directly fighting things with your sword and shield, maybe like a Void Knight, and you're trying to just use spells that do a lot of stuff to support your bros, to support yourself, or do damage to things around you, then the Paladin is going to be for you. Like I said, it still can do melee. You still can spec it into melee going with Judgment and Smite, and actually even pulling stuff from the first couple portions of Void Knight. But Paladin does exist more as kind of like a magic damage dealer within the Sentinel class, and less of a focus on the overall melee like Void Knight, for example. Our next class is the Rogue. And the Rogue, I think, is pretty straightforward for 2 of the 3 masteries. And the Rogue class is very fun. I think, and I've brought this up quite a few times in a lot of videos, if you're familiar with the Twisting Blades Rogue from Diablo 4, or just in general the kind of play style of the Rogue from Diablo 4, then the Rogue will really sit at home with you. There is a lot of movement, a lot of traversal, a lot of really fun mobility that's locked into this character. And you have a lot of ways that you can really do cool things. Like if you're familiar too with Shadow Clones from Diablo 2 or Diablo 4, you get those too at the base kit for the Rogue, meaning that the Bladedancer, Marksman, and Falconer can all jump into that. So that's your base kit for the Rogue, but how do we magnify this to really lean into different directions? The Bladedancer focuses on using melee weapons. The Rogue will have a passive that will allow them to use dual wielding. I think it's around 15 or 10 points invested into the passive for Rogue. That will allow you then to use dual wield. And you're going to use that for the majority of this mastery because you're going to be focusing on all the really cool abilities that you get from just simply the Rogue base class and the Bladedancer. The Bladedancer has 2 specific skills, Shadow Cascade and Synchronized Strike, that are really going to hit home for you with the build. Synchronized Strike is going to allow you to move forward and then strike in an area in front of you, so you have a lot of mobility coupled with that. Or Shadow Cascade is a big, huge circular attack that then, when you go ahead to add on to other abilities, you make it so when you cast Shadow Cascade, it's used by your Shadow Clones as well, because you now have abilities that cast Shadow Clones. So you might think of this as a character that's kind of weaving around and shooting and hitting things with their swords. Yeah, sure. But also you're creating Shadow Clones that are duplicating your abilities all over the place, and you have tons of mobility as you warp around and kill and backstab and attack things. But if you want to lean more into the range side of things, the Marksman is your martial ranged character, meaning that you're not necessarily going to focus 100% on elemental range damage like you would for majority of ranged characters. With the Marksman, you're going to be able to do elemental damage if you want, because you can morph a lot of abilities into that. But you're also going to pull from the Rogue base class some of the trap capabilities, or some of the capabilities like the Shuriken throw, so that you have your medium, your long, and your short range distances all covered with mobility, trying to get out of fights and stuff like that. The Marksman is not necessarily very, I don't want to say not unique, because it definitely is unique in its own right, because this is how Last Epoch plays. But I think anyone who hears the word the Mastery Marksman for any game, it's that same kind of style, right? Like, oh, you've got a hail of arrows style of ability, or you've got a shotgun arrow ability. Like a lot of those typical kind of marksman abilities are going to be making their appearance here with the marksman. So if you're looking for that range style of build, you'll find it at home with the marksman mastery. The Falconer is one of our first new masteries to talk about, and it is awesome. What it basically does is rely on using your Falcon, your companion, to kind of double dip as also your abilities. The way that Last Epoch wanted to create the Falconer was not just simply another character summon class. It was a class that uses their singular companion in the Falcon to actually do their abilities. So maybe the Falcon helps you to dive bomb into things, like it picks you up and physically puts you into stuff. It's all about using your Falcon in conjunction with you as an extension of your character and less of an autonomous creature that's out there just simply fighting on its own. It is one of the new classes. It is really popular. It is also stupid strong right now. It is very, very overtuned. So if you do choose the Falconer, just know that you might be due for some nerfs, and those nerfs aren't going to be anything to make the class unplayable. This is, again, not like other ARPGs where nerfing things just takes it completely off the table. It would just mean to balance it down so that you can get stuff done at the same level as everyone else. Because right now it is very, very strong, very fun, and extremely unique for a rogue class because all of your abilities are tied to this Falcon who is going to do all this stuff alongside you rather than you just simply, oh, I'm going to do something, my Falcon's blinding something over there or killing something over there. So if you're looking for that level of complexity and that level of uniqueness, you're definitely going to enjoy the Falconer. On to the Mage. And I think that the Mage is one of those ones that is very self-explanatory. And I think also very unique because there's a really, really fun mastery in here that I think you'll really enjoy. And the Mage focuses on elemental magic. If the Acolyte focuses on, necrotic damage and poison, then the Mage is the opposite, focusing on the elemental spectrum. And you'll be able to do lightning damage and fire damage and tons of ice damage, and you'll do sort of cool things like disintegrate to shoot beams that just destroy stuff. You've got a lot of stuff in your toolkit as the Mage. But the Mage then has 3 masteries that you can jump into. Do you want to really focus on the elemental style of magic? You jump then into Sorcerer and go harder in the paint on that. If you want to go into more of a melee route, taking all of your elemental magic and imbuing your weapons and doing melee damage with them and using your mana strike capability and stuff like that, you go into Spellblade. But if you want to kind of have like spell weaving, a dance revolution of spells, then you go with Runemaster, who can weave and create their own spells based off the combos you go with. And just as I illustrated earlier, the Sorcerer just plays exactly how you would imagine. It's a Diablo 2 Sorceress. It's a Diablo 3 Wizard. It's a Diablo 4 Wizard. It's exactly that style of character. You even have stuff like Static Orb, Meteor, Ice Barrage. You have a lot of the things that you would imagine that you'd be doing typically. So if you want to lean into that style of spellcaster, you can definitely do it with the Sorcerer. And also too, any of the elemental spells that you'll see before you, like it'll say, Ice Claw. Ice Claw you can turn into a fire spell or a lightning spell. It's the same thing here with Sorcerer. You can do a lot of abilities and skill specs to change all those elemental types around. So don't look at it and go, oh man, they've got a meteor, but they don't have a big old ice meteor. I'm pretty sure Meteor, I haven't looked at Meteor, I've never played a Sorcerer, but I'm pretty sure Meteor can be morphed into a lightning or a frost meteor. So take a look at this class. It's going to be one that's going to really be focused on that elemental spell casting to do all of your elemental damage. The Spellblade, as you would imagine, brings both the martial capabilities of a typical warrior and the spell casting of the mage and puts them together. And it's actually a very fun, really strong class. The Spellblade gets a lot of really good punching power with stuff like Flame Reave or Enchant Weapon or Firebrand or Surge. All these quick abilities to either give you mobility, which Surge does, or give you a ton of different elemental damage types with your weapon that you can then, of course, modify and change. But what's nice, too, is you also have the base kit of Mage's Teleport. So your mobility is really high because you get a mobility ability as a Spellblade, and then you also get your Teleport. Now, those are all called traversal skills in this game. And you do have to be wary as sometimes you can share cooldowns and that can kind of stack things up. But the Spellblade is definitely going to be very rewarding for you if you want to lean really into the martial capabilities of blending both spell casting and fighting in close combat together. Another one of the newer masteries that was added in the more recent months is the Runemaster. And the Runemaster is a very interesting class. So you have your typical elements, your fire, your ice, your lightning. What you'll be doing with the Runemaster is you'll be able to cast anywhere from 1 to 3, or more if you want, but 1 to 3 lightning, fire, or ice spells, and it'll give you a corresponding elemental rune. Once you have as many as you want for your ability, you'll be able to use Runic Invocation to create basically a new spell. So if you cast 3 fireballs and you cast Runic Invocation, it casts a different spell than if you cast 1 fireball and 1 lightning spell, and then go ahead and cast that Runic Invocation. It's a whole different spell altogether. It's a very fun class that you kind of learn how to weave these abilities together and launch different spells out. And as you kind of learn that attack pattern and how that rotation works, you kind of are auto jumping into all these little combos. It's a way more engaging character than your typical kind of spellcaster, in my opinion. You're not just simply flinging spells, you're flinging spells with a purpose. You're trying to build out that combo to make it make sense for you. And I love this class. This is the one that I'm currently doing as my character. I've done Beastmasters and all sorts of other classes, but right now the Runemaster I'm really enjoying, and it's a really ton of fun if you're enjoying a typical kind of mage spellcaster character. And now we move on to the Primalist. Now, if I were to say I had a main in this game, it would be Primalist. I've spent the most time and hours playing Primalist of all the other classes, especially the Beastmaster. But the Primalist brings a lot of really cool, interesting play styles to the table. And if you're familiar with World of Warcraft Shamans, you're definitely going to be familiar with the way the Primalist plays in a lot of different ways. You're going to leverage a lot of elemental abilities, physical, lightning, fire, ice, all that kind of stuff, but you're also going to have tons of summons. Even the base class of the Primalist can summon up either crows or wolves. You'll summon up totems that will do things. You'll have all these many abilities, a lot of melee capabilities, a big area attack swipe. You have all these things that you can do with just the base class, which makes for a lot of fun. Because that means that when you jump into a mastery, those flavorful base class abilities will then sprinkle into those masteries, and help improve their capabilities. But you get 3 masteries, one focused on summoning tons of animals, one focused on your totem and elemental magic, and another one focused on shapeshifting. And the first one we're going to talk about is the Beastmaster, which you guessed it, it's the one that focuses up on summoning beasts. You're going to summon a raptor, a bear, a saber-toothed tiger, and all the other Power Rangers. You have a frenzy totem, you get a scorpion, you get wolves as the base kit, and it's a very fun build. I love it. You don't need to get each and every single one of these entire beasts on your bar. You have to have the beast on your bar to summon it. But you can have a lot of fun. You can have a whole zoo fighting with you, or you can just have one, however you want to do it. And then you'll find uniques and items in the game that will then change how your summons work. Like, for example, there's a helmet that will change all of your wolves into squirrels and increase the number you can summon. So the Beastmaster is a really fun, dynamic version of the Primalist, and I like it a lot because I can lean in a lot of different directions while also having a stupid strong summon that buffs me while I buff it. And that's the best thing about it, is the summons don't really exist on their own in the sense that, oh, it's a summon, it's out there, it's doing stuff, and then I can buff it with stats and stuff like that. Well, also there's a synergy that exists between you two, and you guys can buff one another, and the active ability can buff you as well. It's a really cool kind of cycle with the Beastmaster. Now, the Shaman for Primalist plays like an enhancement Shaman from World of Warcraft. You don't need a dual wield, but you definitely can. It can also play very similar to an Elemental Shaman, depending on how you want to spec out the character. Do you want to focus on really leaning into the totem playstyle of the Shaman? Then you can easily do so. Do you want to jump into all the many ways of doing elemental damage and being more of a ranged elemental character, focusing on those aspects? You definitely can do so. So those are the big focuses and draw of the Shaman. And the Shaman is like the Forge Guard. It is also due for a rebalance and rework. The Beastmaster and Druid have very clear-cut ways that they exist within the Primalist realm. The Shaman and the Forge Guard, they kind of have these weird identity crises where they just kind of, they can do a lot of stuff, and they just need to be able to do some things better, and they don't right now. So that's not a bad thing. I'm just letting you know that the Shaman might in the future get a lot of buffs, making it an even more enjoyable class to play. It's one that I've been playing offline during all of these server issues with the game, and I love it. It's so fun. But I like doing a lot of electric and a lot of lightning style damage, so it really leans into my play style. Now, the Druid focuses on shape-shifting, and you get tons of shape-shifting. You can go into a Werebear, you can go into a Spriggan, you can go into a Swarmblade. A Swarmblade is basically, if you think of it from a StarCraft perspective, it's like a Zerg Mutalisk. If you think of it from a Warhammer 40,000 perspective, it's a Tyranid Hive Warrior. So that is the focus of the Druid. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, that doesn't seem very fun. Yeah, Werebear. Yeah, Werebear, but you also are now an Ice Werebear, which is a really, really prevalent build. Or you go be a Spriggan, and you're doing tons of stuff that's not necessarily you as a shapeshifter doing damage. Like, you know, a Werebear, you go and you smack things with your big old paws, right? Or the Swarmblade, you go and you scythe things with your talons and your such. The Spriggan, you're more of spellcasting into a you are shapeshifting into a spellcaster, which is a really cool, interesting way to approach the shapeshifting dynamic for the style of character, which is usually melee oriented. So don't think that Druid is a melee class. It can be, but it isn't exclusively. You can focus on the totems and all the many different types of elemental damage you can do as a Druid by going into the Spriggan and focusing more on the rage mechanics and mana mechanics of the Spriggan form, because it's a really cool little special thing that you'll get when you jump into it. And our last class to focus on is the Acolyte. Now, the Acolyte brings us three very common names, but ones that all act very differently as far as mastery goes. The base class for the Acolyte delivers a lot of really fun stuff, right? You'll be able to just summon up skeletons. That's where you'll get that action. You'll be able to harvest things. You'll be able to do bone curses. Cursing is also just a big draw of this character. Volatile zombies, blood and bleeding is also a big portion of the Acolyte. Necrotic damage, poison damage. All those things are all going to be big here. And you'll have that replicated across all the many skills that you're going to get access to. And you can take the abilities of the Acolyte and magnify the summoning and become definitely a summoner style of character in lieu of like a, or not in lieu of, or in the same vein of like a Diablo 2 Necromancer. Or you can go into more of a melee route, taking this really cool Lich form and doing a lot of cool things with that. Or you can jump into the new Warlock, which is a fun mastery that focuses on cursing and bleeding and all sorts of other fun mechanics that have recently been added to the class. The first mastery to talk about is the most obvious one of the Necromancer. And the Necromancer for Last Epoch is not necessarily the Necromancer maybe you remember from Diablo, right? Diablo 2's Necromancer is you either have skeleton warriors, skeleton mages, and one of the golems, or if you jump into the more recent one, you've got a weird smattering of characters. Maybe they've got scythes, maybe they've got swords, whatever, or even D3s. Summons are really weird. In this game, you just have a legion of undead. You can have a bunch of archers. You can have a bunch of warriors. You can have zombies that blow up. You can have a big, huge abomination that is essentially disgusting. You can have golems. You can have all sorts of stuff. You can have wraiths, skeletal mages. You just get so many different types of summons with the Necromancer. The Necromancer. I'm all over the place when it comes to pronouncing things today. But they're a very fun pet class. They are the pet class of the game. Even though there are other ones that do have minions and stuff like that, the Necromancer can just have an unending tide of them. And I think that's really fun and unique because it exists outside of the purview of the normal Necromancer, which is like, oh, I've got 5 minions. You can have a ton more than that. So if you really want to be a summoner of the undead, it is truly going to be Necromancer, and you will almost be overwhelmed with how much you'll be able to have fun with that. The Lich strikes a different kind of chord here. The Lich is more of a melee character for the Acolyte, and you focus on the Reaper form. Now, the Reaper form is interesting in that you cannot regenerate your health, and your health just simply decays over time. And when it reaches 0, you don't die, you just transform back into your normal self. So it's all about trying to run that razor's edge of keeping your health at a point that is not 0, so you don't come out of Reaper form, but also drawing it from those that you're attacking. You get abilities to draw things around or draw life from things around you. You've got all sorts of health draining effects that you can lean into. And the Lich is really, really fun in that regard. And it was actually a very strong build before coming into 1.0. It was like the top of the ladder for the most part. It still is, I think, really, really, really strong. And it's just a really cool, fun, different take on this style of character. It's not necessarily kind of how you would imagine maybe a D4 Shadow Necromancer that's using their scything abilities. This is more of a direct kind of shape-shifting character that focuses on a lot of life draw and a lot of ways to kill things before you actually even get to them, to try to minimize the amount of damage you take at the same time. It's a very fun and unique approach to this style of class. And lastly, we have the new Warlock. And the new Warlock is just disgustingly strong. It does focus a lot on damage over time effects, but it also is pretty much kind of like the spellcaster of the three, right? If the Necromancer is the pet class, the Lich is the melee class, the Warlock is definitely the ranged kind of spellcaster. But that doesn't necessarily mean also that it is a weak class in the sense that it's a glass cannon. You can be very tanky with a lot of life draw. You use a lot of bleeding, a lot of hexes, a lot of curses, a lot of damage over time. A lot of mobility too is built into the class too. You can just have so much fun ripping things down in just tides. I've seen a lot of disgusting Warlock build videos, and this is what you're seeing in front of you right now. And the amount of steps you can do, I think, is really cool and really fun and unique. Because remember, you still have the base class you can pull into. So if you want to actually have a lot of really cool summons alongside the Warlock abilities, you can do that. You can have a bunch of skeleton warriors if you want. It's entirely up to you. And this is what I mean in the sense that, yeah, you can find a build guide online, but you can also play this character exactly how you want, pulling from the kit in the way that best suits your playstyle. So if you want that kind of ranged spellcaster destroyer, but also have some summoning capabilities, Warlock is definitely going to be up your alley. And at that, it brings our video here to a close. I know we just did a 1-minute breakdown of pretty much every single mastery, right? I didn't want to sink a ton of time into this because if I had done that, then it kind of becomes this bias of me talking about any one mastery more than another. And it's obvious that I like one over another one. Like, Runemaster is one of my favorite builds. I love the Beastmaster. Paladin is stupid fun. I love the Bladedancer. I am a huge fan of the Necromancer. But I want you to jump into this game and play the game that you want. Not the way the game the internet, or not the game the internet tells you to play. Not the way that some YouTube video, not this one included, right? Not the one that a YouTube video tells you is the best way to play the game. Or some Reddit post or some forum post or some Kotaku article. Fuck all that shit. Play the game you spent your fucking money to play. So when you jump on, you look at all these classes, read some of the masteries, look at some of the skills, and then just start playing. And if you decide you don't like it, you can respec damn near everything except for your mastery. So if you do choose to be a Paladin, you are a Paladin no matter what. So that is the only kind of downfall to making a character that is kind of at your whim, right? You don't know what you're really getting into 100%. But I promise, once you beat the campaign, you can go through on any character and immediately jump into monoliths at level 26. It's a very fast road back to just jumping into quick progression. So please choose one of these things that interest you the most. Take a look at the skills. Take a look at the skill specializations once you jump into the game, or maybe use a builder online, and have some fun. I'm going to link you guys to a lot of the videos that I used in this video because I pulled them off from a lot of other YouTubers. And they all have amazing build guides. This game has been out for 4 or 5 years of early access. So there have been people out there that have been plugging into some really good guides out there. You can go to lastepochtools.com if you need help with guides. You can even go to Max Roll if you want. Like, Max Roll does not have a wide range of guides. They're very nuanced. It's like saying, hey, if you want to play Paladin, you can only play this way because Max Roll only has 2 or 3 guides for Paladin. That's not the way it is. There's so many ways to play the builds. So take every single build guide out there with a grain of salt and approach the game exactly how you want, not like the internet says. That's the too long didn't watch of this video at the end of the video. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. If there's anything that you want to shout out in the comment section below, be like, hey, I just started up and I am loving Lich. Or, hey, you know what? I've been playing now for 3-5 hours and I really just do not like playing Druid. Here's why. Share your information. Share what you've liked or disliked about the masteries and classes you've played for people that are jumping in. Maybe someone's watching this at work right now and they have an extra bit or two to skim through some of the comments of people saying what they did or didn't like about it, and it clicks with what they're looking for. And they go, hey, you know what? He gave me some good information on Spellblade, but what this comment said about Sorcerer, that's the kind of character I want to play. So please divulge. Tell us what your success or your failure story has been jumping into Last Epoch for the first time and playing your very first character. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.